Then, with the abandonment of the railroad, along with the nation's new highway system, the need for travelers to stop at Sapinero was eliminated. So in 1949, the section between Sapinero and Cedar Creek was also abandoned.
268 was good for us, it was a little engine, and what we would do is try to load 6 cars a day, which, as I recall, was about 1.5 miles of rail of the railroad. It was fine, Crested Butte, because coming down after the load, they were going downhill. However, when we moved down to Sapinero, it was kind of uphill to Gunnison, and it get loaded up pretty good at the end of the day, and it started throwing out embers along the right-of-way, and had to go out and put a few fires out. Well, what really put the icing on the cake is when it come by the old rodeo grounds, when they had the high dirt wood fence there. It sent the fence on fire, and so the sheriff at the time, old George Cope, he says, "Okay, boys," he says, "can't use that anymore." So then they brought in the bigger one, the 400 series, the 489, and it's the one that took us on the rest over the hill.
It was mixed emotions, really. They'd been talking about building the dam since the 30s. And so it was always, I'd like to call it, my dad actually called it too, like a sword of Damocles hanging over our heads. We never knew when it was going to happen. Dad wanted to improve the business there. It was a hotel and general merchandise store, a few cabins that we rented to fishermen. And the bankers were reluctant to finance it because, they might build a dam and we don't know how much money you're going to get. So we just had to kind of watch the business deteriorate. So there was a certain amount of relief that it finally happened. The appraisers came in to buy people out, and because of this hesitation, maybe they'll build a dam, they couldn't find any sales. There'd never been, with I suppose the exception of the Moncrief Ranch, which was at one time the J.J. Carpenter Sportsman's Lodge, been very few real estate transactions. So the appraiser said this is a depressed area, and they offered what they thought was a fair price. One sheepman actually went to court, and it was my understanding from what my dad said is that the jury gave him less than the government had offered originally. They didn't understand rural values. It was a federal court, and it was urban jury, and so at that point everybody else folded and took what they could. And what I found hardest was that I couldn't take my family, my kids, back to show them where I grew up because it's under 270 feet of water.
After 74 years of railroad operations in the Gunnison area, all that is left of this area building industry can be found in books and films and museums like the Crested Butte Mountain Heritage Museum, the Pioneer Museum in Gunnison, and the Colorado Railroad Museum in Golden. Also a number of Denver and Rio Grande Western locomotives from the Gunnison area operations that are still in use on both Durango and Silverton's narrow gauge and the Cumbres and Toltec scenic railroads.